Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown. I'm Paul Dottino. This is the Game Balls and Gassers edition for the New York Giants as they fall to the Washington Commanders 21-6 on the road in the 2025 preseason opener. And this was about as disappointing as a game could get, although what we should all know from past experience in watching the Giants is that week one has not been kind to them. In fact, if you go back to Super Bowl 46 against Indianapolis, when the Giants raised their fourth ever Super Bowl trophy, since that time, they are 2-12 in season openers. They are also 2-6 on the road under such circumstances. And the odd thing about this is not only is it that they get off to their schedule with a very slow start, but in recent years, they've also been really sluggish coming out of the gate in individual games during that week one part of their schedule. For example, over the past 4 years, they have been outscored by their opponents by a combined 67-6 in the first half. I mean, I don't think I need to explain to anybody how difficult it becomes for a team. Not that it's impossible, of course, but how difficult it is for a team to constantly have to climb uphill. This has been one of the issues, one of the points of emphasis for the Giants throughout the entire offseason. And yet somehow they still could not get out of the mud in the first half of this ball game. In fact, they went into the locker room in Washington trailing by a count of 14-3. And they were fortunate, by the way, because as you may recall, Washington had the ball to finish off the second quarter. They got all the way down to the Giants' 4-yard line. And on 3rd and 1 from the 4, the Commanders, specifically quarterback Jaden Daniels, had to throw the ball away because of pressure and coverage. Got nailed for intentional grounding with 3 seconds to go. The Giants, of course, did the smart thing. They turned down the penalty and took the 10-second runoff when an offense commits a flag inside 2 minutes. That allowed the final 3 seconds of the clock to expire because Washington had no timeouts remaining. And so Washington had to settle for a 14-3 lead going into halftime instead of having a larger margin. But even then, the Giants were unable to come back out on the attack because as they open the third quarter with a touchback, they get an 11-yard pass to Malik Neighbors for a first down and then go 3 and out. That was their one chance right there in terms of the breakup between the first half and the second half to regroup. Kind of a second opportunity to start strong down 14-3. You've got the ball. You had deferred the coin toss during the coin toss so that Washington couldn't double up and that you would have a chance to re-energize and regroup to open the second half. And it was an opportunity squandered right then and there, with a chance to make it a one-score game immediately out of the locker room, to shift momentum, to give the Commanders something to think about. And the Giants failed to do so. It was more of the first half when they only had one play of more than 10 yards from scrimmage. It's inexplicable, but it's there. And so the Giants, once again, have to regroup after a very poor showing in week one and try to pick up the pieces to get that always talked about 1-1 split in the first two games. And never is it more important than when you play your first two games within the division. So there's a overview in terms of kind of the slow start that just continues to hamper the football team. And until they get over that part of it, it's going to be very hard for them to even get any momentum going in the right direction. In general, the trenches were totally outplayed by the Commanders. Yes, the Giants did get some pressure, a little bit inconsistent, but they did get pressure throughout the game on Washington quarterback Jaden Daniels. But he did a terrific job of running away and eluding them, as we all know he can do. Daniels, in fact, for the game, had 11 carries for 68 yards, including a long of 14. So that's over six yards a carry. And he really did do a fine job. So I wouldn't say that the Giants' defensive line did not get into the backfield. They did supply some pressure, but they just couldn't finish the job. And in fact, they were credited with 5 quarterback hits and 3 sacks. Just not enough impactful pressure that resulted in positive plays for the defense. Now, what you can't really be too happy about, but again, we did tell you that the rush defense might take a little bit of time since this was Dexter Lawrence's debut. He did not play during the preseason. Remember, coming back from that elbow injury. How could you possibly like this? Even with Daniels running for 68 yards, the Washington Commanders finished with 32 carries for 220 yards, running for almost 7 yards a pop and 2 touchdowns. Now, I understand you're going to tell me, well, what about that one long run, 19 yards by Samuel? You're going to tell me about that other long run, the 42 yards by Krosky Merritt. Didn't that kind of alter and dilate the numbers? Yes, but that's still part of it. Again, I figured going into the season that the rush defense might need a few weeks to get itself together. But this certainly wasn't a good start. Giants gave up way too many big plays on defense. And again, that included plays in the running game. All right. So let's get to it. Our game balls and gassers. We'll go to our game balls. And first up, on offense, there will be none. Russell Wilson was under duress the entire day. I don't think there's much he could have done, to be honest. You could, depending upon your ability to excuse plays that were not made in the passing game, you could credit the Giants for as many as 5 or 6 drops. Once again, something that, harassed the team last year, harassed them again this year, at least in game number 1. So you had drop passes. You had an offensive line that did not open any holes for the running game. I mean, 23 rushes for 74 total yards, 3.2 yards a carry. And Russell Wilson had 8 for 44 because he was running for his life. Tyrone Tracy, 10 carries for 24 yards. There's really not much to say. The line did not open holes for the running game. The line gave Russell Wilson practically no protection whatsoever. Surprisingly enough, the Commanders were only credited with 8 quarterback hits and 2 sacks. That's pretty amazing. Wilson did a really good job, actually, if you want to throw out a real big plus sign, that he didn't take more of a beating and take more sacks than he did. All right, so no offensive game ball. It just can't be. Drop passes, inability to open holes for the run, and having your quarterback under duress the entire game. On defense, it was really kind of a scuffling defense, but yet, despite the fact that you never got the feel that the Giants were much in the game, it was still only 14-6 in the fourth quarter. Down by 1 score in the fourth quarter. I think in this day of NFL parity, every coach will tell you, give me an opportunity to be 1 score down in the fourth quarter, because that means you're saying there's a chance. So despite the Giants' scuffles on defense, and they had plenty of them, and gave up way too many big plays. In fact, we'll get to another number later. Still, somehow, some way, the Giants made use of some Commanders drops, some Commanders penalties, whipped them all together, and still held Washington to 14 points going into the fourth quarter, and they were in the game. So yes, there is a game ball to be given out on defense, and I'm going to Brian Burns. Finished with 6 tackles, including 2 sacks. Both of the sacks came during a second quarter possession. Burns is one of those guys who you really want on your team. He is a pro's pro and is trying to do everything he can to get the ship moving in the right direction. Got to mention Bobby Okereke, who had a game-high 16 tackles. Yes, he was very active. Yes, he was all over the field. But again, as a whole, Giants defense scuffled along in this one. They certainly could have given up more points, but the facts remain, not a great day. All right. We'll go to the game bowl on special teams. Now, this one's really tough because I've got 2 guys I'd like to cite here, but we can only give out 1 game bowl. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to rookie linebacker Abdul Carter. The first round pick had really good pressure on a punt early in the game, and also had one later on in the game. And then between those 2 pressures, he actually got his hands on one. Third quarter, about 9.5 minutes left. 4th down and 11 at the Washington 40. And here comes Abdul Carter, using an edge rusher's move to go around the edge and bend and get his hand slapping on the football for a partial block. Resulted in a 31-yard punt, by the way. Talk about sometimes how things, don't go as well as they should. He gets his hand on the ball, gets credit for the block, but it still winds up going 31 yards all the way to the Giants' 29. Giants do nothing with it. They do a 3 and out. And, that's the end of that. But it was really impressive to see how Carter got off the edge and got close twice and did actually get his hands on a punt the other time. So Abdul Carter, right out of the box in your NFL debut, you get credit for a special teams game ball. I do want to mention Graham Gano, though, because we saw him kick very, very well back to himself during the preseason. Well, in this ball game, only had a couple of opportunities and had no trouble with a 21-yard field goal and a 55-yard field goal. So good for Graham Gano as he continues to prove to the Giants that he is among the elite kickers in the National Football League. So those are our game balls. Let's go to our gassers. I can't give out any individual ones because, in my opinion, the offensive line just had a very, very, very rough day against a Washington pass rush that should not have been that potent and that strong. Again, the quarterback hits and the sack numbers are reduced only because of Russell Wilson's prowess. In particular, the interior of the Giants' offensive line was a big problem, and we've told you because Russell Wilson is not even 6 feet tall, what's the most important thing that a team could do? And that is keep the front of the pocket clean so that he's got an ability to see and to have open passing lanes. Well, the edges were certainly somewhat of a problem, but the interior of the line was even more disappointing because there were constantly people getting into Wilson's face, which makes his job 10 times more difficult. So the entire offensive line gets the gassers, specifically on the interior. That would be the guards, Runyon and Van Roten, and John Michael Schmitz at center. Gassers on defense. I hate to do this to them, but I'd give it to the entire unit as well. They allowed 9 plays of 15 or more yards in the game. That's not okay. And they finally ran out of gas and broke in the fourth quarter. It's a 14-6 game, a one-score game. The Giants are still alive. And after a Jamie Gillen punt for a touchback, with 12 minutes to go, Washington has the ball first down from its own 20-yard line. Okay? First down from its own 20-yard line. They're backed up. And the Giants are down 14-6 with 12 minutes left. And Washington goes on a 9-play, 80-yard touchdown drive. Curtis Samuel, 19 yards on a run off the left edge for the score. The drive takes nearly 5 minutes to complete and leaves Washington with a 21-6 lead with about 7 minutes to go. And the horse was out of the barn. Now, why is this drive so disappointing? Well, 6 of the plays, 6 of the 9, were for a minimum of 10 yards. Small chunk plays, if you will. And that's just not acceptable. When you look at it, Daniels did have a couple of runs. Looks like 12 yards apiece. Giants only got the Commanders in a third down situation once during that drive with about 9 minutes to go. 3rd and 5 from the Giants' 48. And Curtis Samuel catches a 19-yard crossing route with Javon Holland trailing in coverage. Converts the first down. So 1 of 1 on third down opportunities on that drive. And that was the clinching drive. The Giants defense by that point, they just couldn't hold up anymore. They ran out of gas. And that put Washington up by 2 scores, two full touchdowns. And that really sealed the game. And then finally, on special teams, Again, we'll have the whole unit get the gasser. I know we're not being very specific here, but it was just that kind of game. McCaffrey with a 35-yard kickoff return late in the third quarter. Again, another momentum play. You know, the Giants had just kicked a field goal. Graham Gano hits from 55 yards out and makes it a 14-6 game. And then right back with about 90 seconds left in the third quarter, after the field goal, they give up a 35-yard kickoff return to McCaffrey, brings the ball out near the 40-yard line. And that right there, some of the spark you may have gotten from getting those points goes away when you give up a big return on special teams. Finally, later on Monday, we will expect to hear from Brian Daboll and maybe get a status report on inside linebacker Micah McFadden, who left this game very quickly with a badly injured leg and ankle. They wrapped him up in an air cast and did cart him off. Don't have any other information other than NFL Network's report that x-rays were negative. Certainly hoping for the best for McFadden, who had a career season of over 100 tackles last year. So once again, we'll be back on Wednesday with a live edition of the Big Blue Breakdown here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network. The Giants fall in their season opener 21-6 against the Washington Commanders. Up next, the division rival Dallas Cowboys. Until next time, I'm Paul Dottino. We will see you then.